Welcome back to the Top 6 show. It's Thursday night. We've got a brilliant panel for you, some big talking points as well, and some new faces on the Football Terrace. Of course, Tom Little, Henry Wright, everybody knows them. They're like the furniture. They're almost part of the family as well. But tonight, making their debuts on the Top 6 show, we have a Nottingham Forest fan, man like Wolfie. I'm loving the studio setup, mate. Looks absolutely pucker. Welcome. Alfie, the Gooner, is here. Well, you can tell he's a Gooner. He's got the hat on. Do you know what I'm saying? So welcome, Alfie. And Sonny talks Spurs. You see that, Henry? Loyal to his club. Sonny's here with us. Big up to yourself, Sonny. Hope that you are well. How is everybody doing on this beautiful sunny March afternoon?
We're third in the league, mate. I'm over the moon. Keep it coming. Champions League music incoming, yeah.
I'm tough. I'm going to get a guard of honor team,
so must be nice.
Or whatever we are, 14th in the league.
Yeah, I'm enjoying not watching Spurs. Keep this international break going longer, please.
I bet. And look, we're above you now, so I'm happy. It's weird, actually. I didn't want the international break to come because we had some good results, I think. But having said that, the first game back is going to be Nottingham Forest, and I'm not looking forward to going to the City Ground because it's an absolute fortress at the moment. And look, I'll be honest with you, though. As someone that grew up when I started watching football in the mid to late 80s, Forest were a powerhouse then. And I was very happy when you got promoted after, what was it, like sort of 25 years or so away from the top flight. And there you are now. You're heading back to a level that, again, only people my age and older remember you being at. So it's a phenomenal season you're having. Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's absolutely taking us back. I mean, last time we were where we are was under Frank Clark in the early Premier League days where we got third. But that wasn't even Champions League. That was what was it called back then? UEFA Cup.
UEFA Cup, I think it was.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
So, yeah, Nuno's doing an incredible job, but the owner is the one who needs a lot of credit for putting this all together. Marinakis is the man, and Forest are back, I hope.
Do you know what I like about Forest fans as well? A lot of supporters of the sort of traditional top six, big six, they always try and take it away from their owners and make it about the manager. Where I actually think in the modern day game, the ownership, the sporting directors, the structures that are at football clubs are probably nowadays more important than they were. And you'll know this being a Forest fan. In the days of Cloughy run the club from top to bottom. Yeah. Yes, he had to get sign off from the ownership and the board, but essentially he had 90% of the power at the club. Now, the head coach or the manager, it's a very small sector of the club they run, where it's the owner and the sporting directors that kind of do a lot of the managerial work. So what I like about Forest fans is City do this a lot as well, to be fair, is they praise the ownership and the structure every bit as much as they do the head coach, which I think is really good.
Yeah, especially like we've had to take a lot of flack with the signings we had in the first season, and this owner's just chucking money left, right, and center. But we've always believed in his desire and his commitment to Forest. I mean, I always talk with like my Arsenal mates; they're not happy. The United mates aren't happy with your ownership. There's loads of teams, I would say, outside of Newcastle, Villa, and say Man City as well. There's a lot of people not happy with their ownership, even you Spurs boys. You don't like your Levy and what have you. So we're in a very good place. Very good place. We'll just see where it takes us now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You will. And I think with Champions League football and that extra money that it brings in, I'm sure that there's going to be big investment. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. Make sure you're hitting the like button, people. And thank you very much to Luke Skywalker for the super chat and encouraging everybody to like the show. Now, we're going to get on to England a bit later. There's some big transfer stories to jump into. England's new dawn as well. I want to get everybody's opinion on what life is going to be like under Thomas Tuchel. But there's a big story that has emerged today due to an interview on the Overlap. And I think it's very, very important to go through this because I didn't know any of this until today. I didn't remember any of it from the time it was going on. I'm not a Spurs fan. I wasn't an Arsenal fan. Hey! I wasn't an Arsenal fan back then. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I wasn't following the news of other teams that well. And Sol Campbell spoke about something today, which has essentially led me to believe this statement I'm about to make. Tottenham made Arsenal invincible. Tottenham are one of the biggest components in making Arsenal go invincible and making Arsenal do the double-double. And the reason I say that is this. Sol Campbell has spoken about back in 2002, back in 2001, the transfer from Spurs to Arsenal. And he's attributed his decision to a prolonged legal dispute and his perception of a lack of support by the Tottenham hierarchy, board and ownership, and the fact they tried to frame him for a crime. And what they tried to do is they tried to put, even though there was evidence that he had done no wrong, even though this could be proven, Spurs were putting out hit pieces and pushing news and trying to put pressure upon Sol Campbell because he was arrested and he was under suspicion of essentially deliberately hurting a fellow professional football player. Despite his insistence that he was innocent, the club were attempting to use this situation to put pressure on Sol Campbell to make him sign a new deal, but at a much lower level in terms of salary than he felt he was worth. Plus, there was a lot of hit pieces ahead of time of him being a Judas and looking to go elsewhere as an example. Listening to what he said on the overlap and then reading the sort of articles that have been produced afterwards and then going back and reading stories from that sort of that period, I just didn't remember this happening in football. And I just sat there reading it. And my first thought was, and the clubs still do it now where they leak stories about people or they throw people under buses or they try and pressure them into deals. But Spurs, this isn't just like, oh, we think he's being a bit of a snake. Yeah, we think he might be talking to another club, so the fans put pressure. They tried to legally do him. They tried to frame him for a crime. And essentially, he didn't want to say the word revenge, but you could tell by his response, he implied it. He essentially got Tottenham back by joining Arsenal. And it played a massively pivotal part in that decision. But Spurs, they made Arsenal go invincible. Because for me, I'll be honest, without Sol Campbell in that back line, I don't think Arsenal go invincible. I don't think the youngsters know how good Sol Campbell was. Between sort of 2000 and maybe 2006, you are pushed to find a better centre-back in the world than him at that point. So reading this today, I wanted to throw this first of all to the Spurs fans. I'll go to Sonny first on your debut. I think Spurs made him go invincible. And I'll be honest with you, this is the Spursiest thing I've ever heard in my life. I know you don't like Campbell. I know he's a Judas to you. But does this change maybe how you perceive his reasoning for leaving?
I don't think it does at all, because what you say about in this situation is it was Tottenham, the club, that did this, not the fans. And I feel like no matter what happens to you at a football club, you know, lots of players go through different scenarios. We saw obviously Harry Kane stay loyal for a long period of time, and the way he left the club was quite respectful in the end, and he ended up going abroad instead when he could have joined any club in the Premier League if he really wanted to. But Sol Campbell could have owed a bit of respect to Spurs fans by not going directly to a direct rival. And, you know, the fans adored him from what I've been told by, like, you know, obviously I was a bit too young at the time to really remember it, but from what my dad said and grandparents and stuff like that, you know, he was such a good elite player. And to go directly to Arsenal, it's still, you know, no matter with these, you know, and what he said, and there's obviously two sides to a story, and we have to see what, you know, Tottenham are never going to answer this, whether it was Lord Sugar or you know, Daniel Levy who were in charge at the time. I think it might have been a bit of overlap, but it's still going to be a painful one for Tottenham fans, no matter what. You know, no matter when a player goes to a rival under any circumstance. Look at, you know, when Figo moved across, they were chucking the pig's head at him, weren't they, at the stadium? It's always going to hurt. And Sol Campbell, the problem is, and he did it most recently ahead of the last North London derby, he still wants to poke fun at it. He still wants to bring it up, where, you know, Arsenal, Tottenham fans, I don't think, bring up Sol Campbell unless he's talking about us. It's sort of, we don't want to give him airtime. There's a reason we call him Judas and not Sol Campbell because we don't even want to say his name. And I remember even the other week we were doing a TalkSport all-time Tottenham 11, and I got the script and Sol Campbell's name was on it. I said, get him off now. He's not even going to be spoken about whatsoever. I was like, put other names on there. I'd rather talk about, Sebastian Bassong or someone like that who actually still loves the club. He doesn't even deserve the airtime. But yeah, there's a lot of things that go on at clubs that we, especially back in those days when it was a lot of it's not, social media wasn't, a thing, and we don't know what was going on behind closed doors. But my opinion hasn't changed. If he's getting framed for something, obviously there's two sides to every story, so it's hard to really, know what really happened.
How about yourself, Henry? Before we know what your views are going to be on Sol Campbell, that maybe doesn't need to be reiterated. But when you hear of Spurs doing this is your greatest ever academy player, maybe up until Harry Kane came through. He was the best centre-back in the world at the time. How Spursy is it? Whether doesn't maybe justify joining Arsenal, but just think about the fact that they forced him out your club. They tried to screw him on a deal by framing him for a crime. Surely that doesn't sit right with you as an action from Tottenham Football Club.
Yeah, best centre-back in the world is a bit of a stretch, but he was definitely up there. It has changed my opinion. I can see why he would, obviously, that we've tried to strangle him into negotiating a contract at a cut price, and we're so desperate to keep him. But last year, whenever it was, the January transfer window, he complains all the time about the stick he gets, and then he goes out and goes from a white jumper to a red jumper. I'll be honest, fuck him. I can't stand the bloke. I can understand a player is all about winning, and yeah, I get why he's wanting to move. He's got more wages. He's gone and won trophies. However, that doesn't change the way we feel about him. He's up there with Ledley King in terms of the greatest centre-backs we've had come out of the academy in the last 40, 50 years. He was an unbelievable player. Around that time, I think they signed Gilberto Silva, Robert Pires, Lauren. They started building up a world-class defence, and he's gone and he's done really, really well. But as a footballer, he was unbelievable. As a person, the geezer's a complete prick. And I think the same about Carlos Tevez. What Carlos Tevez done, going from Man United to Man City. Figo, who's the Turkish midfielder who's played for Inter and AC? Is it Çalhanoğlu?
Çalhanoğlu.
Yeah, he's another one. I look at it from the reason why Campbell's worse than all of these is coming through the academy, getting the armband, and saying 3 weeks before you're going to leave on national television, you're staying. You're staying, you're committed to the club, and then he's come out with some bullshit on the overlap I wanted Tottenham to win. No, you didn't. Let's not come out here and try and deflect and try and put a shield up against all the hate you're getting. And don't get me wrong, I think the hate some of it is a little bit over the top, but don't try and deflect it away. You knew you wanted more money. You knew you wanted to sign for a club that was challenging. I have no problem with that. But don't come out there and try and say, Tottenham fans need to get over it. And then in the January go, it's not like, and then what was the Google ads, they said, it's not like you're doing anything amazing anyway. I actually can't stand the 3 football players I hate the most. One is Jack Wilshere. He is a complete moron, right? For anyone who calls me Henry Talks Arsenal. The other one is Sol Campbell. And for some reason, I really dislike Diego Costa. But yeah, I'll be honest with you, Terry, I think the guy is a complete moron. As a footballer, world class.
But Henry, you're all right with Kane going to Bayern, yeah? There's no problems there. But if Kane comes back, because he's got a clause, hasn't he?
He's on the same list.
Would he just go straight to the top?
Yeah, but Harry Kane, obviously, me and Sonny have seen him. I was only very, very young when Campbell joined Arsenal. But Kane, for me, is the best player up there with Gareth Bale that we've seen. The reason I'm not really mad because Kane's joined Bayern. I hope he goes and gets all the success he wants. But it's still the same. If he then goes from Bayern to Arsenal, knowing the fact there's all this artwork outside the ground, knowing the fact that there's, he's the all-time top goal scorer for the club, he will be just up there for me. Not as much as Sol Campbell because it was a direct move and Kane didn't lie to the television, but he will be on that list of players. You can't do. It's like imagine Liverpool, right? But it's like Curtis Jones. Imagine Curtis Jones or Trent become even better, run their... Imagine if Trent goes and signs for Everton in the summer. Like
That'd just be funny. Why are you going to the...
No, but it would be
Is
like...
it the same feeling for Owen? Because Owen went to United. Is it the same feeling for the Liverpool fans with that? And Owen was quality at Liverpool.
Owen is probably closer to what they'd feel for Harry Kane because it wasn't a direct move. You look at him like he's a bit of a dickhead for doing it, but there's not the same. I don't think there's that same level of hatred that there is for Sol Campbell. Whereas if it was, let's say United were actually good and Trent went directly from Liverpool to United this summer, I think that's the levels that we'd be hitting. I don't think the Sol Campbell one's weird. Obviously, I was very young when it happened, but it seemed like you said, there's always two sides to every story. And how many times have we seen, teams try? I think Tottenham are just idiots for it. If I'm being honest, we'll take what Sol Campbell's saying as true. He is your best asset from a business standpoint. Don't fuck around with your best asset when you don't have the power to compete with all the clubs that are in for him.
Yes,
because you said off stream there was 5 teams, and I went to go have a look because I was certain that it'd been spoken about beforehand. The teams that were in for him were Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, Bayern, and Inter. With all due respect to Tottenham Hotspur, in the very early 2000s, you do not compete with teams that have the likes of R9
now, mate.
Or you don't compete with these teams. So why are you sitting there trying to lowball your only asset? I'm sure the anger also with Tottenham wouldn't be the same if he'd left for a fee.
Yeah. Do you know what it is for me? I understand why Spurs fans will never, ever forgive him. But I think, look, would 50-year-old Sol Campbell make the same decision as a Sol Campbell in his mid-20s who's angry at a football club who has literally tried to frame him for a crime and then used it, and then he's realized they've used it to try and drive down the salary they want to pay me, when he was one of the best, or if not the best centre-back in the world at the time, definitely one of them, when he was the greatest academy player that you'd produced in many a year, where he was the best player at your football club. Look, 50 years old, he might, if he had that brain, a 50-year-old's head in a 25-year-old, he might go, I'm leaving, but I'm going to join United, or I'm going to go Inter, I'm going to go somewhere else still. But the facts are, your ownership forced your best player out the club because they were being cheap and they were trying to drive down the value of him. And for me, and I know you've got different owners now, and I understand that's, you can't put that on Levy.
By the way.
Was it Levy?
That was Levy.
Hang on, so that would have been in 2001. When did Levy?
That's when Levy
2001.
Hang on, Daniel Levy.
But then Daniel Levy did the opposite with Kane. He promised him the world, made him sign that really long contract, and then
and we can't go in session.
So he replaced. So it says here he replaced Alan Sugar as the Tottenham chairman in February 2001 on completion of the sale, and took over day-to-day running of the club in October 2001. So it was in that interim period. So again, I don't remember it.
Probably the paperwork problem then. That's what it was.
Yeah, maybe in that space there. But for me, just again, that's the element that if I was a Spurs fan, I would still want to have. That's where I would want an inquest, and I'd want to understand that why did this happen. He's making the accusation now. Equally, maybe this was already out there and no one saw it. As I said, I'm not a Spurs fan. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but I wasn't following news around those clubs in the early 2000s like I do now, kind of covering the sport. I'm actually staggered by this story. It's one of the worst I've ever seen. And someone in the comments says, talk about Tevez, says Tevez never signed for United. He was only on loan Yes, but we messed up with that and we called it out. We should absolutely put the £25 million forward to make it a permanent deal. It was, again, we didn't treat him how Spurs treated Sol Campbell, but we should have bought the player. We were absolutely ridiculous in the way we treated him, and we ended up seeing that happen. Michael Owen was hated. Yeah, I think you could tell Owen was hated by Liverpool fans. I don't know if you feel this, Tom. Every time he talks about you online now, it's like he's sucking up to you so bad to get.
Oh yeah,
back
he's desperate to get back in the good books. He's desperate to try and get back in the good books and be remembered as what he was when he was, a Liverpool player. But that's never going to happen. He joined United. It's done. It's done.
Yeah, but we're very tribal, aren't we? It's like if an ex-player scores against your team and celebrates, you forget what he did for your team. It's the fact that how dare you celebrate? You know, we just become very
that's
tribal.
what football fandom is, though. It's all tribal.
Yeah.
Well, you see at the moment, Newcastle fans are the funniest with it at the moment. I tweeted one today and just wrote the word irony, because they're every time an Arsenal fan or a City fan praises Bruno Gyokeres, they lose their shit. Every time anyone says, "Oh, I'd love to see Isak at this club," they go mad. But today, and I've got to go and just make sure I double check which team it was about, a massive Newcastle account that hates people speaking about their players literally put out a thing, because that's it. Bruno Gyokeres sitting there with Cunha. They're in their international camp, and Magpie Media, massive Newcastle account, writes Agent Bruno. And see, you're doing the same thing. I mean, Wolves fans are going to see that and go, "You bastards! He's our player." And it's a tribal thing. And when it comes to tribalism, people generally throw their morals out the window, their logic out the window, their brains out the window, and they just act on instinct. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see that. This year from Destiny says Sol Campbell's exit from Spurs is still relevant. Still has relevance to this day. Sol frustrated with the board that still did not build a proper team around him to win trophies. And that's the other element of what he said. And it has turned out to be true. Part of the reason he wanted to leave is he never believed that Spurs would try and build a team that could win. And love him or loathe him, 25 years later, he was spot on, Emery.
Yeah,
they still haven't.
That's the part I will agree with. I mean, we've had some world-class players, Bale, Modric, Kane. We had Van der Vaart when he was good. We had that 2017 to 2015 to 2018 team we had under Poch. We probably needed another 2 or 3 players, and I believe that team should have won a league title, but we didn't. And then we went 587 days without signing a player or whatever it was, and now we're in here due to poor recruitment and bringing in. Well, let's not even get started on Ange, but bringing on poor recruitment and bad managers, we're now in a position where it's Europa League or bust. Cut a long story short, it's going to be bust. We won't be out of Europe. And then I think, come the summer, a lot of our players, their heads might be turned. But how that was 24 years ago where Sol Campbell left. And we're still in a similar position where the board have still not done
you were
what
15th.
is required. Huh?
You were 15th.
20... I think we finished 12th that year.
Is that the year you were 4 points off relegation?
Yeah,
Ginola and that.
Sol Campbell scored. Didn't he get a brace against Man United that year in a 2-2 draw? I think he did. But yeah, the point still stands. We're like, what gives me the hump about this football club is we've got the second highest season to get in the league. The club only care about money, only care about, different revenue streams. Got the F1 deal, the go-kart and all this other bollocks. But when it comes down to signing decent players, we go to Forest and give them 50 million, don't come back with Gibbs White, and then they sign 2 better wingers in Hudson-Odoi and Elanga and keep the other 30 million or 20 million quid. I mean, that just shows you how bad. Like, I know you might have a different opinion on Brendan Johnson, but what he's done at Tottenham, I mean, so we've spent, like the recruitment over the years. Ange had 450 million euros or 350 million euros. Me and Terry looked at it the other day, and the squad right now. We've had 15, 14 hamstring injuries this season.
Can I say something? I want to throw this question to Sonny on this, and then Alfie, because I haven't heard from Alfie yet. But Brendan Johnson's a good player. But and look, and he's a good player. He's a good player. Again, depends on everyone's definition of good. I consider good to be the same as mid, because mid means in the middle. Mid is good, right? But when they signed the Elanga, I don't think any football fan would have gone, "That's a massive upgrade." The difference is, Sonny, for me, when I look at Nottingham Forest and I look at Tottenham, is Newcastle's ownership and board are determined to put that club back to the top. So there's a different mentality in the dressing room, where at Tottenham, I don't think there is an ambition to be a winning club. And I don't think it matters who you sign, who becomes your manager. I think you will eventually rot all of them. And maybe I'm off key for saying that, but that's how it feels from the outside looking in at your club.
Let's just put it this way. We couldn't have done what Newcastle did on Sunday. We would have turned up and lost our arse. It would have fallen out, because we just, in those higher pressure moments, Tottenham just boil over, and it just doesn't happen. We don't, I don't even think Liverpool had an off day. I just think Newcastle were the better team. And, Dan Burn turned up, Bruno turned up, Isak turned up. We haven't done that this season. In the Villa game, nearly in the AZ Alkmaar game in that first leg, and in the.
I mean, you'd had your chance against us in the
Well,
Carabao Cup semi-final.
But that summed it up. Went 1-0 up in the first leg. I knew it weren't going to be enough. We go to Anfield with a 1-0 lead trying to defend, and it just doesn't work. And there's just no ambition. And the problem with Tottenham is, and because there has been a bit of an overturn in players already under Ange, there's still that trickle-down effect that comes from Levy and the board and everyone else, and it seeps into the players, it seeps into the manager. That's where, I do feel like, I feel like Ange is a bit of a puppet for Levy, but he still hasn't got any control over that side because Levy will always pull the strings. And I think Levy is a good businessman, but stick to that because some of these footballing decisions over the last 20-odd years have been criminal and embarrassing. It's absolutely barbaric, like sacking Jose a week before a final, but yet he hasn't sacked Ange because he literally has not got anything left to do. And that's where I just don't know where we go now. And you say about Brennan Johnson. Now, at the beginning of the season, Brennan Johnson was scoring goals, but it was the same goal. I actually compared him the other day to the wing version of Scott McTominay because Scott McTominay, I think, is good at scoring goals. He would turn up in the box and put it in the back of the net, but his all-round play, that's where Brennan Johnson lacks. He very poor at dribbling. He's not been that quick. I don't think he's really shown his electric pace. Against fullbacks, it's like there's no point. And it's summed up against Fulham. I didn't even notice he was on the pitch, and then he gets subbed off. And I was just like, what are we doing? Because I think he's making, and the way the team plays under Ange, these wingers are suffering because Dominic Solanke's doing a lot of the work, but they're not linking up with him. I think Dominic Solanke's good, but the wingers aren't good. The midfielders aren't helping him. So no wonder he's not getting any goals because it's just not a team effort. But again, I just think last summer I said it was actually quite a good window. But the problem is we do one extreme or the next. We've got all these youngsters in. They've all been chucked in at the deep end, but you haven't brought in any good top players, apart from Solanke maybe. We needed so much more, and we're always going to be the bridesmaid and never the bride.
Thing is, Sonny, with the Brennan Johnson thing, I think you guys have misprofiled him. He doesn't suit an Ange setup. Brennan Johnson, for me, is a push and run merchant because he needs grass to run into to be effective. He can't take the ball and dribble past 2 or 3 defenders. He can't play in a team that's constantly, playing on the halfway line. That's not his game. He suits better a counter-attacking team, like when he was at Forest, where he can play a ball in over the top. He's going to put the afterburners on, get in there. Now, he has flaws in his game on top of that. He never tracks back. He can't cross the ball. He can't header a ball. His finishing, I think, is actually decent, but it's very repetitive. He always shoots across goal. He does get a lot of goals from that angle. So he's limited in what he does. But this is the problem I've got with the recruitment Spurs have done, is you've misprofiled players. You've just brought players in and kind of shoved them together in a system that doesn't suit
pigs around holes, isn't it?
You look at Maddison at Leicester, a different looking player compared to, what he is at Spurs. Solanke not really getting the same style of service that he did against Bournemouth. Again, they were a bit more of a counter-attacking team when he was leading the line with them. So I feel, yes, you've bought players that have potential, but if you're not going to play them in the system that suits them. And for me, the biggest thing about Brennan Johnson is his best time at Forest was when he had Jed Spence alongside him at right wing back. And yes, people say that was in the Championship, but in that season, we came up across Arsenal. They destroyed Arsenal in that season. Leicester as well in the cup run. And Liverpool only beat us 1-0 late on. They had fantastic games in there. Their chemistry was brilliant. And that was more in a 3-back formation with Jed Spence overlapping Jono and working together down that right flank. So I don't even think you're using Jed Spence right, because you put him at left back and he's been brilliant, but that's not even his strongest position. It's such a mess right now at Spurs in terms of the setup. If someone organised them, it would work.
Who do you think? Do you think that's on the coaching, or do you think that's all on Ange?
I think it's on both. I think there's a lot of misprofiling going on players that are being put out there. And I just think you've got to look at the manager. You got to look at the manager who's not setting them up right. You're too gung-ho. Do you know what I mean? You're too weak in that middle area of midfield. You're leaving 2 at the back. And Constantly. It's not suiting the strength of players who need space to run into or who could counter-attack. Sometimes I think, just drop your line 10 yards. Chuck an extra body in midfield. Put more balance in that team. There is no way in hell this Spurs squad should be. Where are you now? 13th, 14th,
14th. We're only
I don't
above
scroll
16.
down that far anymore. You know what I'm saying? I sit at the top these days, but I can't see it. But I don't think that squad is as bad as the position you're in. Am I saying you should be pushing for top 5? Probably not. But you should definitely be in a European conversation.
It's the same for Son, though. It's the same for Son. He's like he loves cutting in. If you were to go, if I said to you guys now, describe a perfect Son goal, he cuts in off the left. And sticks it top. He can't. Ange wants his wingers high and wide. Hence why he was quite better last season, because he was playing as a striker. But then we realised, wait, when we play against West Ham or Forest, he can't do it with his back to goal.
Which is why when people say Son's finished, he may be past his peak, but I think you might see him leave and go to a club that plays him in the correct way, and you'll be like, why the fuck do we let him go? And this is what happens. My club has been doing this for 12 years. It's why players look better when they leave Man United, because you've got to think what we did with Ten Hag. Terrible management of the club and terrible coaching by the manager. We bring in a manager who has a very set style of football that's been at 2 clubs the majority of his career, that play, one under Pep at Bayern Munich and then at Ajax and everything else. We know how they play football, high possession, etc. The club sanctions for him to buy £500-600 million worth of ex-players or players he wanted whilst at those clubs in that system. But then they elect to not implement that system. It's actually crazy. It's like opening a steakhouse. You hire one of the best chefs for cooking steak in the world. You buy the Wagyu meat. You buy everything you need. But then essentially you go, right, what are you going to serve today? Oh, actually, we're just going to serve pastries. We're not doing steak. It's weird. You never do that in a restaurant. So why would you do it at a football club? Viewers, give us your thoughts and feelings. Alfie, I want to ask you, as an Arsenal fan looking at Spurs, how much longer do you want them to keep Big Ange at the club?
Well, I feel like in an ideal world, I'd love to see Ange stay. But at the same time, you look at Spurs, and at the end of the day, a lot of their problems come down to the same answer. It's Daniel Levy. I mean, I've said countless times on many different occasions, Daniel Levy looks at money like a Mayfair hooker. And I may be wrong for saying that, but at the same time, those are my thoughts. But what you need with Tottenham especially is, you, as an Arsenal fan, I want to see, fair enough, I've got a massive dislike for Spurs. As an Arsenal fan, that's a given. But at the same time, I want you guys to at least be competitive. It's not fun when you've got no one to laugh at. So I'd like to see you get fixed quick, but at the same time, we've had this before. We've had the situation where Jose's come in. You think things are going to go well, and then he's sacked a week before a cup final. Then Conte comes in, didn't even want the job in the first place. He comes in, goes out on a massive outburst after dropping a 3-1 lead to Southampton. A lot of what I've thought about Spurs is I've seen that they need to match up their manager and their managerial structure with the type of players that they're looking for, because otherwise it's not going to work. But at the same time, it all comes down to Levy. He's not, fair enough, fair play to him. He's a very, very good businessman. He knows how to make his money. But as for his footballing decisions, I think they're atrocious.
Yeah, but we know that Ange is the one who has final say on these signings. He said that in an interview very early on when he joined. And, for all Levy's faults, and believe me, my brother's a Spurs fan, I want nothing but rubbish for Spurs. He can't say he hasn't put money into Ange. Ange has spent, 300-400 million? That's enough to build a team.
Euros.
Yeah, but that's enough to build a team that should be challenging in the European spots at the very least.
Yeah.
So to blame Levy for some of these signings, I get it, but I think it's a little harsh on him, because he has put the money in. Now, Spurs' argument would be, well, we're making way more money with our Beyonce concerts, F1s and what have you. Chuck us some more money in. But would you chuck some more money in at a manager who signed the type of players he has?
But the money's always been at a delay. Like Henry said, we didn't spend for a calendar year, so we're always going to be on the back foot. And that 400 million fee, that includes Kulusevski and Pedro Porro, because they were like 18-month loans for obligation. So they ended up getting moved over to Ange's money or signings. So it is a bit warped when you look at it, because I think what's annoying is, and I think we needed to sack Conte as well because it was getting toxic under him. But you look at how Ange has been backed compared to him. Like Conte had to put up with Clement Longley and Ben Davis, and Ange got his centre back. Ange got
and
his
he got a
striker.
top four as well with that.
And that's
that back
and
five.
that's the thing. But then what was funny was Wolfie was just saying it then. Oh, these players are for counter attack and a back three and a wing back, and I'm going, hang on a minute. That's Conte, so it just doesn't make sense, does it?
And that's the biggest issue at Spurs since you sacked Poch, and you've mirrored what Man United did after Fergie. Is you keep changing the direction the club is moving in, and I always feel, by and large, that there'd always be some waste. You need to go right. We want to play a particular brand of football, so we need these profiles of managers and these profiles of players. That way, if a particular player doesn't work, get them out quickly, someone else in. You haven't got to change the system. Equally, if a head coach doesn't work, someone else can come in and they should be able to pick up from where they left off, because there should be a marry. There should be a marriage when it comes to the footballers and the way they're looking to play. And you've seen that at Liverpool this season. Slotter's come in and they looked at Amorim, and Liverpool don't think Amorim's a bad coach. They just looked at how Amorim wants to play and the profiles he needs, and that may have been a 2-year, maybe a 3-year process for Liverpool.
We said that it's come out. We looked at Amorim really closely, and then our guys just figured out that it cost about 450 million quid to build a squad that would fit his style of play with this current group.
Exactly. But for Man United, we've got a broken Frankenstein squad as it is, so we have to spend that regardless. But we have to stick to that. We need to stick with, forget Ruben Amorim. However we're trying to create a squad, however we're trying to play football, whatever the philosophy and the players needed, we've got to complete that process with or without that manager, because you've got to keep moving in the same direction. Spurs are doing what Man United did. Okay, we're going to try a pragmatist and a counter-attack expert. Now we're going to try someone that's free-flowing and attacking. Yeah, but he likes his wingers to be touchline wingers and wide, and we've got wingers that like to cut in and shoot on their opposing foot. That'll be all right. And then you'll end up sacking Ange, and then you'll go in another direction where suddenly 3 or 4 of your signing under Ange that might have looked good, suddenly they might not fit because they're not the right player. And until you get that cohesive approach, there's always going to be waste. You're always going to have, well, that player didn't work and whatever. But that's been Spurs' biggest issue. If you would have gone for an Ange straight after Pochettino, I think you'd have maintained where you were for all those years. But it was the chopping and changing between managers. And Nuno, I hated the way Nuno was treated at Spurs. I got a soft spot for Nuno. He was one of my clients in my last job in banking. Lovely man, love him to bits. But he was like 13th choice, which made the players not respect him from day one. He wasn't even meant to be there, and I should never have allowed that to go public. But he was just never really given an opportunity because the squad wasn't built for how he wanted to play. And there wasn't they weren't trying to sign players for him. Then they go to Conte and they start doing it. Then he leaves anyway. And then you change direction again. And I think that for me is a big issue there. We've got a few super chats I want to jump into. First one says, Wolfie, it's not the transfer fees why we get rubbish players. It's our wage structure and what Levy has done to it. 2 players over 100K a week at Spurs. That's crazy.
That's
but at the same time, Forest don't have many players over 100K, and we're sitting 3rd. So the players are out there.
I don't think that's true, because Son's on 190, Maddison's on 160, Romero's on 150. Vicario bonuses, I think he must be close to 100. But I get what you're saying.
I think it's just some of those other players, isn't it? Like the squad players who are just still on like 40s, where you're like, they could. Yeah, another club they'd be on 75 or 80.
We've got the lowest wage bill to revenue in the Premier League.
We paid for managers.
Yeah.
We paid for managers. That's what makes me laugh. We paid out 20 millions for all these. I think half of them on gardening leave still. So get your head around that.
Ronnie here says, government back our new stadium, keep crying rivals. Yeah, we know. Well, the thing is, this is what's crazy about the Man United being backed by the government for the new stadium. One, the government's paying for the redevelopment of the local area, which is exactly what taxpayer funds should be spent on. I don't know why people are. We actually scream at our government, spend the money on people, the local areas. They decide to do it, and everyone's angry. But everyone who builds a new stadium has to get government approval. In fact, everyone who builds a new wall out the front of their house has to get government approval. It's normal. I'm trying to do an extension on my house. I have to get government approval to do it. It's very fucking normal.
Yeah, but it's the manner in which it's talked about, isn't it? You had Andy, what's his face, the mayor, saying not one penny of this. Just come out and say straight. There will be money towards it, and what have you.
There is going to be not a single penny spent building the new stadium. The new stadium will be funded by us, loans, investments, selling off naming rights. So the build of our new stadium will not come out of the government money. However, the area surrounding it. So, for instance, the train lines are going to be improved around there. The roads are going to be improved. There's going to be lots of private development of homes. There's going to be lots of business units built for restaurants and shops and things like that. None of that. Some of that will be paid by private people. Some of that will be funded by the government. But none of that will directly help Man United revenue. So nothing that we own is getting any government funding. Does that make sense? But this is what's crazy about it. It's a little bit of chicken and egg. United can't get permission to build the new stadium unless the whole area gets a redevelopment. So it's a little bit like if the government said, no, we're not going to put any money in, the only option we'd have left is to rejuvenate Old Trafford. They wouldn't let us build a new stadium. And one of the biggest reasons is actually the access to that area and what we would need to do it. The roads and the infrastructure can't handle it. So it's one of those, it just hasn't been very well reported on because the mainstream media keep lying. And I fell out with the BBC over it. They wanted me on the talk. And they said, oh, can you break down if you think government funding is good? I said, yes. And explained what I just said to you guys. And they came back and said, would you argue that it's good for the government to spend money on your stadium? I said, well, why would we argue that when that isn't happening? And their words were, and I kid you not, we know, but it'd still be a good debate, wouldn't it? So hang on, it's not a good debate for me to argue for something that isn't going to happen because it misleads rivals into thinking their taxpayer money is funding Man United's new stadium. Now, what I will say to City fans that moan about it, your stadium was literally taxpayer funded from the Commonwealth Games. Before you start kicking off at Man United, I just want to point that out, right? It's just the lies. West Ham's. The lies said about Man United's new stadium is absolutely ridiculous. But we're United. We're used to the lies.
I think they could have gone with a better design for it though, because it kind of looks like a circus tent.
It looks. I see. This is it. I'll be blunt with you, man. I don't care if you all hate it. I, as a United fan, love it. I think I actually like the design, but then I like the Millennium Dome. I kind of like that sort of view and that look. And I actually think when it's built, it's amazing. But there's loads of things that even United fans like. It's just going to look like a sort of soulless bowl on the inside. You haven't looked at the design. It's actually more square on the inside. It isn't like round like Spurs or the Emirates. It's actually sort of squared, and the way it comes down, the seats are very close to the pitch and it's very overhanging. I think it's a really, really good design. I get not everyone's going to like the sort of tent effect outside, but that's also a clever money-making scheme. It rains a lot in Manchester. So I've got a feeling we're going to have loads of things that people can do around the stadium. So I think we're going to build the stadium. This is another way of making money. I think we're going to rent out sort of, when you go to a big shopping center like Westfields and on the outside there's loads of restaurants and shops that you walk past. I think we're going to have loads of units like that we rent out to people. But to make that feasible, you probably got to cover it up because it rains like 300 days a year in Manchester. So listen, and not everyone's going to like it, and that's fair. But then not everyone liked Tottenham Stadium. I thought it looked brilliant. Some people are like, oh, it looks like a toilet bowl. You're always going to get people that don't like it, to be honest with you. But I kind of do really. Moving on from Tottenham, there's a story today, Alfie, that Arsenal were linked with a move for Liverpool's Luis Diaz. Would you be happy if that was a big part of your summer transfer window? Luis Diaz from Liverpool to Arsenal?
Well, he certainly brings a lot of quality. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that Luis Diaz wasn't a good player. I think he provides a very, very good service down the left-hand side. He'd certainly be an improvement on what we've got down the left-hand side at the moment. And when I do talk about that, I talk about the likes of Leandro Trossard. But at the end of the day, it's all rumours. And the amount of times I've seen other Arsenal fans on Twitter saying, oh, we're going to get this player, we're going to get that player. My only response is to say, I'll believe it when I see it. Because how many times have we were linked to Marmoush before we got the move to Man City? How many times have we seen it before?
Listen, I hear you on that, and I know that a lot of people have that stance. I love a transfer story. I like the excitement of it. I like the will he or won't he. I also like the debate around whether you think they're good enough for your team or not. I think my generation, and Wolfie's probably the only one here that's really my age. That's how transfer stories were always handled, especially on holiday. When we were younger and we'd go on holiday, you'd be around the pool in Spain or Turkey or wherever it may be. And the only way you got football news was the newspapers, but they were 3 days old when they arrived in those countries. And you'd read the back of the Mirror and it would say Man United are linked to Rooney. You'd be like, oh, wow, I hope we get him. And then every day you're rushing to the shop to see if there's been an update. But you spend the rest of the day around the pool with like other people talking. And would you like him? Where would he play? And I still love that element. Tom, though, you were laughing.
Get CFAX as well, mate, and Club Call. Pound a minute, yeah.
CFAX was the one, mate. These kids don't realize they're so easy now. But Tom, you were sort of laughing at that link. How happy would you be if Luis Diaz left your Liverpool and joined Arsenal? Tell us.
Oh no, tell you, I'd be so gutted. But how would we ever replace his 3 months without a goal? You know, we'd struggle so much without his 9 goals in 29 games. At 28 as well. Let's bear that in mind. Please, he was linked with a move to City last summer, and that turns out it was in a potential swap deal for Julian Alvarez, and we said no because we're idiots. That would have been brilliant because I don't rate Luis Diaz. The man is 28. His end product is inconsistent at best. His dribbling is massively overrated. He's only called a good dribbler because he's from South America. His passing, if he ever passes, isn't great. Can't remember the last time he got an assist off a cross. He is a good runner. He'll track back loads. So, you know, if Arteta wants to form a back 9, he'll be back there at left back. Don't worry about that. The man is 29 next season, I think. So, you know, it's not like you're getting someone with room to grow. This is what you've got. You've got a guy who will go 3 to 4 months in a season without a goal. And this season he's been playing up front for us. This season he's played on the left for us. He's not a very good. I want a rival to take him. I want a rival to give me 60 million quid for Luis Diaz. I would feel like how Chelsea felt when Arsenal bought Havertz. I would feel like how, I don't know, Arsenal or whoever felt when you see
yeah. I mean, like when you sold Torres to Chelsea.
yeah, it would be. Luis Diaz has this weird reputation that he's this incredible winger. I've watched this man play for 3 before the injury he got against Arsenal a couple of years ago. Yeah. Now he's not that.
The quoted price from the source is 37 million.
You know what? I'd be making me money back on him. Unless Saudi come in and give me mega money, I'm not going to turn my nose down at. You know, we could probably get up to 45. I would take 45 for this version of Luis Diaz that I've got.
Problem is, you got a full rebuild needed up front. If you were to lose him, if Salah were to go, Nunes, you lot tell everyone isn't good enough.
Wolfie, I think that's the direction we're going. I think that we've won the league this year. So the guys in charge, Edwards and Hughes and that, they're going to look at it and go, well, we can let the guys who run out of contracts go. They've got their farewell. They've got the best farewell they could ask for. We get those wages back. We can sell all these players. That's
a massive squad overhaul, though.
It is, Sonny, but this is what Edwards wanted to do when he was our director of football, when Klopp was in charge. But back then, Jurgen Klopp had the power to veto. So right after we won the league, there was 2 things that happened. COVID happened, which meant we couldn't sell Sadio Mane. We were going to sell Sadio Mane for upwards of 100 million quid. And then that was going to be spent across 3 or 4 positions. And Edwards wanted to get rid of Jordan Henderson and Wijnaldum and bring in Bruno Guimaraes. But Klopp pulled the plug on that one himself and he went, no, you're giving Henderson a new contract. And he ended up on 180 grand a week. That's by the by. But now there's no one to tell Michael Edwards, no. There's no one to tell him stop, because everything that this football club does is yes or no by him. So he's now got the complete control that he wants. I do think that you'll see a big overhaul. I think the only position that you're not going to see, or the only area that you're not going to see a big overhaul in, we have no need to touch goalkeeper, and we have no need to touch midfield, bar potentially one young defensive-minded guy.
Do you think Kelleher will go?
Kelleher will go. I'll put it this way. I think that ignoring the guys who are out of contract, because that's up in the air, even though I think they'll go. Sellable assets for Liverpool are Kelleher, Tsimikas, Gomez, Elliott, Endo, Nunes, Jota, Diaz. I think every single one of them
What about Chiesa?
Can be sold. Chiesa could go. Chiesa could stay. He's 12 million
Canate.
quid. It's not really a big thing. Canate could go. I think the club want to keep him, but he could go if he's not willing to sign a new deal. There's not really many players in
It's
the
just really
in the squad
risky,
we've
though,
seen.
isn't it, to get rid of all those players in one.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not
It
saying they
is.
also like putting them all up for sale.
It is really risky, but I also think that this league title gives them the time to do it because they'll sit there and go, well, you had your league title a couple of years ago. You know, we've got a buy now. We've got an element of give from the fans where we can have the time to get this project done without there being the constant looming of you need a league title now. They'll sit there and think we can take 2 years to build the squad up and get the right players in. Whereas if we hadn't won a trophy this year, the pressure would be there to where you're going, right, well, Liverpool, we need a league title soon. We need a top honour soon. The fact that there's a league title won in Arne Slot's first year, I would still expect trophies, by the way, but there'll be a belief within the club that we don't need to get one next year. That league title will carry us over for a bit.
I guess you'd have to sign, like, I know you said, obviously, you put them to one side, but then you've got to keep that spine then. You've got to give Van Dijk, Trent, and Salah a new contract because then you've still got that winning mentality. They've all been amazing this season. Maybe Trent, on the fence. But, if you're getting rid of those other players, then you've got to keep them, definitely, because then otherwise you're getting into
It's
7, 8, 9 outs.
Yeah, so it's two separate things. Those players that I mentioned, they're not necessarily used much by the manager. So they're squad players that you could move on, bring in first teamers, and then turn some of the other guys into squad players. With Van Dijk, Trent, and Salah, Liverpool have an awful lot of contracts and an awful lot of key contracts expiring in 2027. If we were to give Van Dijk, Salah, and Trent, even though I don't think Trent wants it anyway, but if we were to give Van Dijk and Salah the money that they're after, which is 450 grand a week, which they deserve, our wage bill, which has been so closely monitored since FSG walked in the door, goes boom. Because every single other player who is important to this team wants mega money. I think Edwards, Hughes, FSG, whoever it is, are looking at this as a chance to get that wage bill back under control and to put a hard cap on it again. Because before Salah got his 350 grand a week deal, the hard cap was 220. No one went above 220. We had the likes of Sadio Mane putting up 25 goal seasons on 110 grand a week.
Do you know what you also got? And remember, you're heavily bonus laden, so there is whenever the bonuses for this season are paid, whether that comes on the next year's accounts or this year's, you guys will skyrocket to you're already one of the biggest wage payers in the Premier League in terms of percentage of your income. It's going to jump up massively because a lot of your players have huge bonuses. And I hear what you're saying about your side of things. Alfie, is Luis Diaz better than Martinelli? Would he improve your team in that way, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I would have said that, but after listening to what Thomas said about how he's not really been delivering as far as goals.
Don't listen to me, Alfie. He's a 60-70 million quid footballer, mate.
I am now.
Yeah, but then again, obviously, as Terry said, that the asking price is £37 million, but knowing how stupid Arsenal are, we'd overpay. But I look at Luis Diaz. Yes, on his day, he could probably do something as a club, as a player. But at the same time, my whole idea is I want players in my team that are going to give me the best opportunity to win trophies, which is why me and a lot of other Arsenal fans, and they're probably too afraid to speak up, they want a lot of players out, and I agree with a lot of the players that they're saying that need to go. But I'd probably say, if you're not going to, I wouldn't say Luis Diaz would be an improvement, but he definitely gives Martinelli something to think about, because at the moment, I feel like he's taken his position for granted and he hasn't really been performing the way I know he can.
Do you not think, though, when you've got a fully fit squad, Trossard's already kind of giving Martinelli like competition? I personally think Arsenal need someone better than Diaz. I think that left wing, the number 9, and a creative midfielder, those are the 3 final pieces to win the league. I don't think Diaz comes in and you win the league with his output.
I feel like with Trossard, I feel like a lot of his problem is in especially this season, I've seen that Trossard is a lot much better when he comes off the bench. If you see him when he starts, he doesn't really play with the same spark and energy that he's got if you bring him on with about 15, 20 minutes to go. But you never know.
What Arsenal need to do is stop buying players with like that Arteta wants to fix. They need to go out and go like you did with Rice. You went right, put the money on the table, get Nico Williams from Bilbao, or even like try and test like Mbuemo or someone like that. Someone who's going to come in and be like, "Wow, that's a star. You made a statement." Because I think you were on the right track there. And then last summer, with Sterling,
but if I'm an Arsenal fan, if the first person through that door is not a number 9, I'm rioting. It has to be a number 9. It's been too long.
We haven't had a proper bagsman since Aubameyang walked out the door, and over the past few seasons, Arteta's been given a lot of money. Yet we're still buying players as if we're fighting for 8th place. I mean, what club challenging for a league title goes and spends money on Calafiori? Not many.
You need more.
Considering
he was very highly rated last year. A lot of big teams want to call. I mean, if you're after number 9, Luis Diaz played number 9 this season. He scored 2 against Tottenham as a 9.
I think the biggest mistake Arteta made, and look, it is a mistake, is the club said we're only spending X amount in the summer. I think that was wrong. They should have. I don't think getting Moreno and Calafiori was wrong. They should have spent more. They should have also gone and got a number 9. But I think the mistake when it comes to prioritizing that money is I think so much faith was put in Odegaard and Martinelli getting back to that form of 2 seasons ago, scoring sort of 15 odd league goals each. I really believe that Arteta felt they would do that this year, and they haven't. And it's created this, obviously, this ongoing and kind of massive debate. I'm not a massive fan of Luis Diaz. I think he's very good aesthetically on the eye. He's like a lot of wingers in the league. Looks very good, doing very little productively. So a lot of people from an eye test merchant perspective would say, oh, he's so much better than Elanga. Elanga delivers. Elanga scores goals. Elanga sets things up. Diaz, when he first joined Liverpool, the amount of times I'd see him and he'd hit the post, he'd just go wide or just go over. And you'd think, well, it's a little bit unlucky. He'll sharpen that up. But it hasn't really got better. He's had some purple patches where the goals go in and then months where they don't. And remember, he's playing for one of the in the last 3 years, he's been playing for one of the best teams in England and one of the best in Europe. He's not playing for an inconsistent mid-table team with no clear direction as a football club. You know, he isn't playing for a team like Man United, who have been rudderless for over a decade. He's playing for Liverpool, who have been praised. You know, he's playing with brilliant midfielders, wonderful defenders, other very good attackers, and he's still inconsistent. If I was Arsenal, look, if it's a deal of like 30 million and he's coming in to be part of your attack, okay, maybe. But for me, I think you need. He ain't that much cheaper than Nico Williams. And I think you're better off going for a Nico Williams and giving him an opportunity to really thrive at a club like Arsenal than spending it on Luis Diaz. And I agree with Wolfie. They need a number 9. They need a bagsman. They need someone that's going to put that ball. And I know you can't always sign your top priority first. Sometimes you might sign someone who's at the fourth on your list of priorities, and they come in first because of the length of time it takes to get certain deals done. But I know Gooners will hate this, but from a PR perspective, calming the fans down, having a relaxed summer, if you could get to mid-June and then go, boom, there he is. I don't know who the striker is going to be, whether it's Isak, whether it's Gyokeres, whether it's Sesko, just get that announced and get it over the line. I think that goes a long way to keeping Arsenal fans relaxed and encouraged for the season beginning.
I mean, you look at, obviously, for me, the 4 main targets as far as number 9s are concerned are obviously Isak, Gyokeres, and other than that, you've got Benjamin Sesko and Retegui from Atalanta. Osimhen as well. But for me, the main 2 that we should be probably going for are either Gyokeres or Isak. And the only reason I say that is because they're primed and ready for English football. Fair enough, Gyokeres only spent, a season or 2 at Coventry, but it was still English football. He understands the pace of the game. Whereas if you ask him to go and buy someone like a Sesko or a Retegui or an Osimhen, they need at least a year to acclimatise themselves to the league. And we haven't really got time for that. As Arsenal fans, we're growing impatient.
But the Gyokeres isn't that hard a deal to do because he's got a release clause. I think he's got a 100 mil release clause. So if Arsenal really want, there was nothing stopping them doing it in January. If
they don't
wanted
want him
to.
though. He's not
Yeah,
the guy
exactly. There's talks of Sporting would deal at about 60 or 70 million. There's reports yesterday linking Forest now to Gyokeres. If that happens, I know we've talked about the source of air, but if that were to happen, that's just a further embarrassment for Arsenal. Forest get into the top 4, and then straight away they go and deliver a bagsman. You know, I'd love to see it.
I can see why Arsenal would be a bit iffy on Gyokeres though, because if you look, I watched a lot of sport in the last couple of years because I may or may not have wanted Ruben Amorim to replace Jurgen Klopp, and we saw how well that went. But when Gyokeres plays for Sporting, he's very much a running behind type striker. He can do the drop in and link up, but he wants to be on the shoulder. He wants to be on the counter-attacking transition, running behind defenders. And I don't think that's what Arteta wants from his striker. I think Arteta wants a striker who will play off of the who will play off the wingers and bring everyone else into the game primarily. I don't think Arteta will build a system to maximise a striker in terms of goal output. I think Arteta would build a system which spreads the goals out everywhere in an ideal world where Saka's popping up with 20 and 10 and insert striker here is popping up with 15 and 10 and left winger's popping up with 10 and 15 and it's all spread out neatly. I don't think that Gyokeres does that for Arsenal. I think Gyokeres would be better suited to a team like a Forest or to a team like a United, a team that are quite happy to see possession a little bit to draw teams out.
I hear what you're saying, Tom, but
go over the top.
But the point is, Gyokeres is way better than what they've currently got. He's better than Havertz. He's better than Jesus.
Well, there's a lot of strikers.
They've run out of time. If I'm an Arsenal fan, my patience is this thin on this striker situation.
But they can't make the mistake of panicking and buying a player who doesn't fit what they want to do.
Okay, but they make the mistake with Gyokeres. Let's say they get Gyokeres for 70 million and he flops. He will still have a resale value of probably 50, 55, 60 million.
They're a poor selling club.
But Wolfie, the difference with Arsenal is Arsenal are not a club who will buy a player and if they struggle in the first year, it spin them off. Let's go get the next one in. Arsenal will stick by him for 3 years. And if in those 3 years, if after year one it's not working, it'll be first year in the Premier League under a new manager. It takes a bit of time. We'll go year 2. Year 2 doesn't work. They'll go, okay, look, he's nearly there now. We're getting there. We're seeing signs. Arsenal, a ruthless club like a City, would buy Gyokeres. He gets 10 goals and they go, right, bin him off. He's not good enough. And
okay, but even with that scenario, and I hear what you're saying, as an Arsenal fan, I'd be more accepting of it because at least they went out and bought a number 9 and not tried to convert an 8 into a 9. I would have more sympathy towards my board that they actually showed the ambition to get me a striker into the team, and then I can say, okay, I will give them some patience, or yes, they did make a mistake, but at least they did. The names, no one's talking about any other names than the 4 or 5 that Alfie mentioned.
Do you know what's really interesting about that, Wolfie? Right, in life. So when I worked in the banking industry, I did some work with procurement, and in procurement they would bring a lot of contractors in, and banks would need contractors for all sorts of reasons. And one of the biggest things was very boring, so I'll get it done very quickly, but it will make sense. There's always a lot of reviews that had to happen, especially if there was a feeling that the FCA and the authorities would come and do sort of like a review on a certain department. And you'd hire in contractors because you may not have the workforce to spare to take away from their normal jobs to do the review. Plus, it was good to get outside eyes. In the procurement teams, they would often put out a bidding process so different companies could bid to go, right, we'll put these people in, and they'll do this work, and we'll find out this, and we'll present it in that way, and we can produce, these are the other companies we've worked for, and we can get you 100% ready for an inspection. And the procurement team, essentially, with the sign-off of senior leaders, would go, right, which company are we going to use to come in and help us do this review externally? 9 times out of 10, they would pick from one of the big 4 accounting firms, KPMG, Deloitte, etc. The reason they did that is because, say you went with one of those big firms, and they did a shit job reviewing, and the FCA come in and go, this is crap, no one lost their job because you used Deloitte, you used a known name.
Yeah.
If Arsenal go out this summer and sign a player who is at the peak of his powers, that not everyone's going to rate. You're always going to get, oh, I don't quite like him. But if they sign Osimhen, if they sign Gyokeres, if they sign Isak as an example, if it doesn't work, I don't actually think, listen, barring people that despise Arteta, because if it turned out Arteta invented chemotherapy, those people would say he's a bastard for making people bald. The people that hate him, and there's nothing they can do to change that. But if he goes out and signs a serial goal scorer, maybe even someone who's won trophies as well, if it goes wrong, there is going to be far less kickback against him. If they go for a 20-year-old who doesn't score a lot, or they try and sign someone to fix if they sign Rasmus Højlund, we're going to fix him, right? As an example.
Exactly.
And it goes wrong, there's no way back from that. And so for me, I just think there has to be this element of buy something that's as close to being a sure thing as possible. Nothing's a guarantee. And most of the strikers that are of the absolute tip-top level, the Mbappes and the Haalands, probably even Isak, really, they're unattainable. Arsenal can't get them. They're either too much money or they're not for sale or they don't want to join. But then you've got that group that come after it. And I know that Sesko is the guy that name keeps coming up. Doesn't matter to me. I'm not an Arsenal fan. But I do worry they're going to sign someone that isn't ready to score the goals just yet. I'm genuinely, and I want to say worried. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If I'm being objective and taking myself away from being a Man United fan, that's a concern signing. I like Sesko. I think there's a really good player in there. Is he ready for that Premier League step up? Because Arsenal are not a team in transition. They're not a team growing. They're a team in title races, and the job is to deliver. And I don't think they have 2 years for Sesko to settle and become that guy. I could be wrong. He might come in straight away, hit the ground running, start bagging loads of goals. But I think Osimhen or Gyokeres should be the number one targets for Arsenal if they can't get Isak. And I get your point about the hold-up play and everything else, but I think their hold-up play is pretty good. And by the way, if Gyokeres joins Man United or Forest, it won't be long for Forest, as an example, until more teams start sitting back against them anyway. Because the better the players they buy, the more consistently they win, the less opponents are going to attack them. So I think Gyokeres, I've seen Gyokeres play. I think his hold-up play is pretty good. He's got a good first touch. He's got a bit of skill about him. He's a player that can score his own goals. So he can get the ball on the edge of the box. He can dummy a pass out wide, turn. He can get past a player and rifle it into the bottom or top corner. And I think he could do a very good job against the low block as well, from what I've seen.
I just think. I think Arteta and Arsenal have their eyes set on Isak.
Sesko.
If they can't get him, it's Sesko. That's why there was so much talk around it. I think if they wanted Gyokeres, it would have happened last summer, or it would have happened in the January.
Yeah.
The fact that it didn't makes me think he's not even on the radar, which then makes me think, okay, what's the plan with the Sesko then? Because the one thing I'll say about Arsenal is, yes, Arsenal fans didn't go, well, I'd want you to go out and just buy a striker. When Arsenal were doing that, they were finishing 8th. When Arsenal were just going out and buying a player, they were finishing 8th. What they've done in recent years is wait. They probably wanted Declan Rice a year before they got him, but he wasn't available, so they bided at the time, and they didn't panic and stick themselves with a player that isn't good enough, and they can't shift that or that they've got to stick by because the way they want to run their football club, they can't afford to keep chopping and changing every single
He's
summer.
out of time. He's out of time. He can't keep kicking the can down the road to the next transfer window. This is now, what phase are we in with Arteta? 4.5, I hear. They're going to, even the most diehard, Egal-like fans of Arsenal are going to have to start, they will start turning on him at some point. Yeah, Arsenal cannot keep going without trophies.
That will happen. We're going to go to some of these super chats here. First one says, want to see Arsenal competing for years to come. And they should. You've got the core squad there to do it. You just got to keep adding quality to it. And you got to keep spending money. And you got to keep increasing the wages you pay your better players to keep them at the club. And spending money is a crucial part of becoming successful and maintaining success. And it has been that way for over 100 years in English football. It's just the volume of money has gone up. Well said, Tom. You live and die by your recruitment. Arteta wants the right striker for 5 years. If we build too many average players, we'll end up like Chelsea. Wayne here says the Forest fan, Wolfie, really doesn't know the fan base he is talking about, does he? Arsenal fans are the most fickle, is what he says here.
Oh, I know that. I know.
Riyadh, 16 out of 10. Ryan, is it Ryan? Or is it Ryan says, Tom is clueless and has a slot agenda, saying he should have been starting Elliot, Endo, and Kwanzaa. Elliot is rubbish, and when he starts games, Endo is only useful for a certain situation, and Kwanzaa has struggled this season.
First of all, you're the man who just yesterday messaged me saying Arteta's a better manager than Slot and will take this title race to the last day. And yes, he should have used Elliot, Endo, and Kwanzaa more because our team is tired. And they wouldn't be as tired if the squad options were used more. Gravenberch just gotten injured on international duty. That might not have happened if he hadn't had to play 90 minutes every single game this season. But yeah, sure, I'm worried about this title race that's going to the last day.
Yeah,
Arteta's going to overturn a 12-point gap.
Crazy.
Anyone else, any Arsenal fan that says otherwise is kidding themselves. Liverpool have won the league, and congratulations to them. They've been the best team so far this season. And but I personally said that the league was over after we lost 2-0 to Bournemouth.
Yeah.
That's another thing Ryan said as well. He also said Alexis McAllister is just an Argentinian Harry Winks.
Yeah,
he said
that. Harry Winks.
He's a crazy guy.
Harry Winks is going to be English shabby at one stage. So.
Tom, welcome to the front of the class, is what Wayne says here. Joshua Jack with a question says, if you guys get 20 losses and he stays, what next?
He's only 4 defeats away from equaling our worst ever season in a top flight division.
What season was that?
That would have been
one day Ramos, when it
08-09.
No, we didn't have that many. We didn't have as many defeats we've got now.
Yeah,
the year after.
Yeah,
I think we've got 3 games before we play the Europa League, and that's Chelsea away, which is a defeat. We've got to play Forest in there, which is the defeat, and we've also got to play Liverpool away. So just sack him now.
There we go. Crypto FFTV says, great stream. Thank you very much for the super chat and donation. I really, really appreciate that as well. Obviously, England start a new dawn this week with the German as our head coach, which still triggers the xenophobic media in the UK, and you can tell they're gunning for him. We're going to get onto the Lewis Miley stuff a little bit later and what we expect, but he had some very, very strong words today when speaking about Southgate's style of football and England's football, saying that we were too scared to lose. We didn't let the better players express themselves. How encouraging, Henry, was it to hear the England manager echo what most of us have been calling out for a good 18 months to 2 years, that we do have, whether people like this or not, probably one of the most talented nations of football players at the moment. And part of that, I think, is because I think the likes of Brazil and many others are probably well below the standard we're used to. But at the same time, England have got a very high caliber of player across the board. Is it encouraging for Tuchel to speak about expression, being attacking, and getting the best out of these players?
Yeah, in terms of squads, I think we're right up there with France and Spain. And it was, do you know what? When he first came into Tuchel, I was a very big question mark there. But after watching that interview, coming out and saying what I think a lot of the nation actually think, that we didn't have a style to play last tournament. He's bang on the money. We were just trying to survive on the knife edge against Switzerland, sack a late goal against Slovakia, Harry Kane, an overhead kick from Bellingham. We scraped our way through to the final. A lot of people are going to be raising eyebrows that Jordan Henderson's in the squad and Kyle Walker's in the squad. But I think we all said this backstage. Don't judge him right now. Judge him in 2 or 3 games before the tournament. You've only got to look at England's last game before the Euros, and we lost to Israel at Wembley. I mean, that tournament, the football we played was catastrophic. But we've actually got a manager now and I know we had this with Fabio Capello, who was a very successful manager with the likes of AC Milan and whatnot. But I'm actually very, very optimistic about Tuchel in England. He's not afraid to make the big calls. If Kane's not playing well, he won't just leave him out there. He'll sub him off. He's won major honours. He's won a Champions League. He's a really good cup manager. He got PSG to a Champions League final. He's won league titles. He's a very experienced coach. And one thing he said was excitement. I mean, when's the last time everyone on this panel or everyone in the chat, whoever, which nation have you spot around the world, when's the last time England played a game and you come, whether that be a tournament or a friendly, like we don't kill off like enough teams. We're like, fair enough, we might bat San Marino, but we don't go for blood enough. Like, when's the last time everyone watched England and went, you know what? We were fucking brilliant today from minute 1 to minute 90. We don't get that.
Probably the World Cup in 2022.
Exactly, that was 4 years ago.
You won
Nearly
like
8 years ago, whatever it
6-1.
was.
Well, against Iran.
Yeah, you beat Iran 6-1. You beat Wales 3-0.
We done well
Senegal
against
3-0.
Wales, but we drew with US. I think at the last 2 World Cups, we've had moments in both those World Cups where we've attacked and scored goals and looked good. But as soon as you start getting to the knockout stages, the pooper goes every single time, and that was the biggest issue with Southgate for me. Do you agree with that, Alfie? Like we need a manager that is brave enough to say to Cole Palmer, to Saka, to Jude Bellingham, go out there and express yourself. We're not going to sit 9-10 men behind the ball. You know, is that what you want to see from an England coach?
For me, when it was announced that Thomas Tuchel was going to be taken over from Southgate, I was the optimism for me started there. Fair enough. I understand that there are some people out there that would want to keep things in-house. They would want it to be an English manager managing the English national team. But at the end of the day, not all the best managers in the world are English. Maybe you can count on, you can't even, there's maybe 1 or 2 English managers out there that have got a decent amount of quality. And like Henry said, Thomas Tuchel is a very, very good manager. He knows how to take risks. And he even said himself, we were too afraid of going out of the tournament rather than wanting to get to the final and win it. And the amount of times I was watching the tournament last summer, seeing us look like we're going to go forward, Rice has got the ball in midfield, and then he'll either pass it sideways to the left-hand side or knock it back to Gyokeres or whoever starting in the back line. We want to see excitement as England fans again. I mean, we are the creators of football. Football was created in this country. And right now, we don't even seem like we're the best at it. But we've got the squad to be the best at it, which is why I'm so optimistic about Thomas Tuchel being appointed. Fair enough, there are a lot of people out there that may disagree on the players that he's brought into the squad, but he's just getting his feet under the desk. Wait till we're allowed 3, 4, maybe 5 games in to his tenure as England manager and then judge him then.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? If you look statistically, Eddie Howe winning the trophy for Newcastle was the first time I don't know if it's English or British manager since Harry Redknapp in 2008.
Yeah.
Only the 7th English manager to win a trophy since the Premier League begun.
That's crazy in itself. So going, German is not a big deal as far as, I'm born in Scotland, so I've got no skin in this game. But I think what the team needs is a manager who doesn't try and shoehorn players in on reputation. That's going to be the key thing. We saw it in the summer, trying to squeeze Foden in, Bellingham in, Palmer in, all these players. Sometimes he's going to have to drop some big names for the sake of the shape and the formation of the team on top of reputation. And we'll see what he does with that. I think that's an important thing he's got to address.
Yes. Well, we saw in the summer, didn't we, Tom? We were out there in Germany and everyone was screaming in the fan parks of the games. Harry Kane looks off the pace, try something different. And we just persisted with him. We saw that right back in 2018. He got overused in the group stages, never really subbed off, got to that semi-final. Look, I'm still not that annoyed that he didn't square it. I still want my number 9 to shoot from there. But the fact he should have been taken off earlier in that game because his legs were gone and somebody else given a chance is crazy. And I think that's always been the biggest issue. And one thing no England manager has done in my lifetime, because even Capello and Sven, the late Sven-Goran Eriksson, God rest his soul, the mistakes they made were they still bent the knee and kissed the ring to try and fit all the superstar players in. The fact that we had one of the greatest technical midfielders of a generation in Paul Scholes, and Sven said it himself, and I don't like speaking bad of Sven because he's recently passed, but he said himself, the only reason I moved him out onto the wing is because he was the better of the three and he could handle it. Well, no, you should have dropped one of the three and played them in their natural positions and put a left winger out there as an example. We've seen this so often. I used to watch England as a younger man, and there'd be a lot of United players in the squad back then. And I used to think, I'm not saying copy what Fergie did, but like we played horrible, boring football where Man United players and Arsenal players and Liverpool players were playing brilliant football every weekend. Is that why are we not mimicking the football that these players play week in, week out? When you look at Spain at their best, and I know they've just recently won the Euros, they played how loads of Spanish teams played football. It was second nature. They didn't go, right, you Spaniards, you're used to your tiki-taka, your formation. What we're going to do is long ball to the centre forward who's going to be by the corner flag. They wouldn't do it. They play their way. And I just hope that I just hope that he doesn't bend the knee and he follows the greatest ever English manager in Sir Alf Ramsey. You don't pick your best players, you pick your best team. And if we follow that mantra, success is possible for me personally.
That's the problem, though. Oh, sorry, mate, go on.
No, it's all well and good. I understand this is first squad, and I understand there's some injury problems. But I think people are going into this with this idea of Thomas Tuchel as a manager that he's not. Thomas Tuchel is going to manage this England team in the same way that he managed the Chelsea team through that Champions League campaign, because that is how he got success. It was the same way he managed the PSG team when he got them to the final. That football is not the football that certain people think it is. It's not this. We're not going to play teams off the park if we're going to stick by that style. I agree with everything you said, Terry, in terms of the best nations have a clear style of play and a clear identity throughout. I could tell you that the Italian football was built on catenaccio, solid defensive displays, whether it be in a back four or a back five. Spain was built on the tiki-taka. England has the best league in the world, the fastest paced league in the world, filled with players that are playing under some of the best managers, but there is a common theme across every team. Every team wants the ball. Every team is strong in transition. Every team wants to play football. And then you get to the international stage and England play like they are the underdogs at every possible opportunity. They play to give the opposition the ball every single time. If England want to win, and I'm not, Tuchel could win. Tuchel is a very good manager. He's a very good tactician. He could take this England team over the line where they hadn't been, but he's not going to do it in a way vastly different to Gareth Southgate. It will be a similar way to what Southgate done, but when you have a better manager who can match up tactically with the other managers that he has to face, you can get over the line in certain games. But I think England should be trying to get a manager who wants to play to these players' strengths. Look at the attack that England could put together. Look at the quality of player England have altogether. And yet, by my estimation, it's going to be a rigid 4-2-3-1 or a rigid 5-2-2-1, focused on being defensively solid, making sure you can win knockout football games and grab that goal. England should be able to put out 5-6 genuine world-class attacking talent across every area of the pitch and play teams off the park. You know what one advantage is that I don't see anyone ever talk about with the England squad compared to all the other squads? England's percentage of players playing in domestic league is higher than any other top nation. It's higher than any other top nation. So it's every player, bar Bellingham, and when he's in the squad like Bino Gittins, etc., they're playing in the Premier League. They're playing in the same league with the same philosophy, with the same standard of football. It should be easy to translate those ideas over. So why has no manager ever tried to translate those ideas over? Why is it always revert to type?
Is that a good thing, Tom? Is that a good thing? Because you got to understand the other philosophies from these other, major European leagues. Because we don't win the Champions League year in, year out, do we? I mean, Real Madrid have the most on those. So I don't think it's a bad thing having players that are playing abroad who get to see the culture, the different philosophies. I mean, in those.
Bar Real, if we go through the last 6-7 years of Champions Leagues, Liverpool have won it once, Chelsea have won it once, City have won it once. And if we've not won it, teams have been getting very far in those competitions, making the final or the semi-final year in, year out. outside of those, Real Madrid have won it.
I think Bayern won it as well, haven't they?
Bayern won it,
Bayern.
and that was with a
I
really good
think,
German
Tom,
team.
though, what you're saying, though, is a mentality thing as well. And Thomas Tuchel said it himself. The players look stressed and they were set up to go and not lose. And I think that's all about the coaching and the approach from Gareth Southgate and previous managers. We can't lose, as opposed to let's go and win. The players, and some of that also stems from us as fans. And I know that Standard FC are going to get so angry with me saying this, but I don't like how we treat all players from all football clubs or all leagues or all nations the same, but they're a monolith, because culture plays a part. And I ain't naming any places because I haven't lived everywhere. I don't know where everywhere is like. But there's probably some people. We all know this individually. There are some people at work that can get shouted at by their boss. Go, yep, they go out and do a good job. There are others, if they get shouted at, will crumble and fall. There are others, if they get shouted at, are straight on the phone to HR, crying their eyes out. There are others that might fight back, because everybody needs to be motivated and handled differently. This idea that, I know we live in this world where everybody wants everything to be equal, and that is a really nice utopian vision. But actually, you do need to treat people differently. Like, my son can take more of a joke and banter than my daughter. She struggles with it. So, of course, I'm much harsher with him when it comes to jokes and banter than I am my daughter, as an example. And I know that's my children, but I think that there may come a point where she might be an adult and still be like that. My mum's quite like that. My mum's not very good at taking jokes. So we all rip into each other in my family, but we make a concerted effort to not do it to my mum because she takes it to heart, as an example. And I feel like we do this with footballers. It's, well, this country would never accept anything but winning, so you got to put the pressure on them and be nasty to them if they fail. Well, we've been horrible to our footballers in this country my whole life. It's led to 0 trophies. Maybe. And I know that in this era, being horrible online is some people's kind of USP. It's a unique selling point, being angry. And I've been angry before, so I'm not saying it's wrong. But if we just think about England for a moment, since when have our fans been angry and abusing the players? How has that ever improved us? Show me the empirical evidence where it makes England better, us being angry. And the one tournament where I think we did our best was in 2018. I know we didn't get to the final of the World Cup, but I feel like one of the things that helped Southgate in the earlier days was there was less expectation. We switched off. We were like, oh, we ain't doing nothing anyway. Got to the semis of a World Cup. So I almost feel like there's this element of, yes, you should expect and you should want, but maybe we've also got to have a different approach as fans and try and relieve some of that pressure on these players, because for 39 years, we've succumbed to it. So the idea that if we keep applying it, it will make us better, I just don't see where that logic comes from.
I get what you're saying, Terry. I think, yes, I get what you're saying, but I think it's more of the media. When the media are building up the expectation and the hype about the England team and saying, we should be getting the final, winning this tournament and that tournament. I think the 2018 one that you're talking about, even the media's expectations were lowered, which in turn then, filters down to the fan base. So I think we see it too much anyway. You see a new player, a young kid come on the scene and suddenly he's the next Maradona or what have you within half an hour of playing. There's too much of this overhype going on. And if they did dial back the rhetoric and the overhyping of players, you would see those players relax more. I think fans react emotively and emotionally to results because they want to win. But I think a lot of the responsibility is on the mainstream media.
Mate, I think you make a great point there. You really, really, as a United fan, I always remember even some United fans, Rooney was never as good as we thought he was going to be. You mean Rooney never got to the level that some journalists said they think he might get to?
Yeah.
How the fuck is that Rooney's fault? Do you know what I mean? Sonny is going to get to 1 million subs on YouTube. Imagine his subscribers in 5 years going, Sonny's a bum, He never got to where Terry predicted he would. When you actually break down that logic, it's ridiculous. And again, we've all done it, but I was younger. I think actually it's some journalist on a desk at the Daily Mail that wrote that. Rooney didn't come out in a press conference and go, I'm going to be the greatest English player of all time and score 500 goals in my career. He never said that. So why are we holding him to that standard? It's kind of, it's definitely a media thing. I agree.
It's like the whole idea of the golden generation.
Yeah.
The way that team was hailed. The fact that we had players like Lampard, Beckham, Gerrard, Terry, Ferdinand, we were expected to go and win. And I feel like that detrimented us. And put a lot of pressure on those players, which is why when we got to a quarter final of the Euros, we lost on penalties.
Yeah,
But
no, I
fair,
totally. Yeah. Sorry.
fair enough. Fair enough. These players are quality players and they have the capabilities, but at the same time, putting pressure on them isn't the right way to go about it. We should be encouraging them to do the best that they can with what they've got.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
labeling them a
There
golden
has to be a
generation
standard
winning
at some point,
nothing.
though.
Go on,
Like,
Sam.
I agree that there's an element of the media massively get onto English players. They have a fantastic habit of building young players up just so they can be the ones to knock them down when they don't reach the impossible standards that they set. But I also think there does have to be an element of you should be doing better. You should be competing.
No, I
Because
agree.
the
I agree
league
with that.
is where it
I
is.
agree. No, I agree. I agree with that, and there has to be that element there. But I think it's, as we say, we should understand that the media is never our friend. The media is never trying to make England better at football. The media doesn't want Liverpool to be successful. We all sort of think the media is against our football. Yeah, we saw, the media come out and attack Newcastle since they won the trophy and talk about the Saudi owners and sports washing and blood money. And this is why I said to United fans, don't think they're siding with you because you don't like Ineos and they don't like Ineos. Because if we had the owners you like, they'd still be attacking us. If it was Qataris, if it was Elon Musk, whoever it was, they're always doing it. And we're seeing it with Lewis Miley at the moment. Lewis Miley hasn't even played for England. And the media onslaught, that a lot of it was started by the pundits that called him out for celebrating and having a bit of fun on a football pitch. Suddenly he's got this, and ironically, Jamie Carragher is a big part of that. And Jamie Carragher was a big reason that Raheem Sterling got a lot of hate, because Jamie Carragher was one of the lead voices when Sterling was leaving City that pushed out this notion that he's just greedy and money hungry as opposed to caring about his footballing career. I remember hearing Jamie Carragher talk about it. And the media keep lying about Lewis Kelly. They keep saying, well, he has to be careful. He's had 2 red cards already. No, he hasn't. He got 1 red card for denying a clear goal-scoring opportunity. The other red card was rescinded. It wasn't a red card. But they keep saying he had 2. Now, yes, 2 have been shown to him, but 1 was incorrectly given. So a player that's had a red card early in his career for pulling a man back, essentially, and stopping a goal-scoring opportunity is being labelled as some overly aggressive, not much going on up top player who's arrogant, who thinks too much of himself. And you've got grown men talking about wanting to punch him in the face. I've seen nothing and heard nothing, read nothing that makes me suggest that Lewis Skelly is nothing other than a very talented, very successful for his age, very well-grounded young man. I've heard his mother talk, and I know that you can't always take a player's personality based on their family, but you listen to his mother talk, again, articulate, smart. You can tell now if he started doing anything, he's got a relationship with his mum, a bit like Bellingham, where if he started doing anything stupid, his mum is going to be coming down on him like a ton of bricks. And I think that's a brilliant thing for young players to have parents, families, brothers around them like that. But again, the media has jumped on what certain pundits said, what certain rivals have said, and they're painting a picture of this young man. So he's getting it before he's kicked a ball. Some players, it goes the opposite way. It's praise, build up until they have a bad moment, and then it's right. Now let's chop their legs off. And I do think as fans, I know we're tribal. We don't like some of these players because they're at rival clubs, but I think we have to start to do our best to look beyond this, or at least investigate what's being said. And if you look at Lewis Skelly and ask yourself the question, what's he actually done wrong? He had a bit of banter and mocked a celebration, which for me, I've seen Liverpool fans give him stick, but they literally idolize Robbie Fowler that pretended to snort cocaine off a football pitch, right? So again, it's you're not bothered about the celebration. There's something else that's bothering you, and you're using the celebration as a kind of tool to push your agenda. And I want to know what it is. And of course, and I'll say it, there is a percentage that do it because he is a young, successful black man. Of course there is. But I think there are multiple motivations for this. And I just don't see how treating a young Englishman who's just got his debut like this is going to help our nation be better at football. I don't see how it is conducive to footballing success, aside from everything else. So, yeah, the media have got a big part to play. I think you're spot on, Wolfie. Spot on.
Yeah, it's very selective as well, isn't it? When you look at Martinez in the finals of the World Cup and the penalty shootouts with his shithousery, everyone was there bigging it up. Look how he's getting into the minds of the strikers. That's why they're missing the penalties. And now you're seeing Luis Skelly doing, a celebration. I like it. It's too woke, man. When I'm bantering with my mates about their football team versus my team, you're gonna have those kind of bantery conversations. Bring it back in. It adds some needle. One of the most famous scenes we've seen in football is the tunnel scene with Keane and Vieira. How many times have we seen that since then? I want to see that passion on the pitch. And, if it's going to rattle up, instead of complaining about it, why didn't the Man City players use it as motivation to get themselves back into the game? Let your football do the talking. So I say more of it. I say more of it. And fair play to him.
I agree. I know Tez here says Terry, the Arsenal saviour, but don't have the same energy for Sancho. But that's just a lie. Because as soon as Sancho was ostracized from the Man United team and all the stories were coming out about behavior, all the leaks about him having to eat his lunch in the car, I defended him every single step of the way. So again, you're lying. I said it on multiple streams. Go back and watch them. They're still up. They're still there. I don't see what Man United doing a character assassination of him. There's no mileage in it. In fact, it makes it harder for us to sell the player. So yeah, to sit there and act like I haven't defended other players that this has been done to, defended Marcus Rashford in this situation, slammed a lot of the media reports about Paul Pogba that have been wrong. So the idea that I only do it for Arsenal players is just a lie. And if you push that lie again, now that you've been debunked, you will be blocked. And when you say recently, well, look, I've criticised his form. If Luis Skelly plays bad, he should be criticised for it. Absolutely. And Sancho's been poor recently. When he was playing well earlier on in the season, I praised him. But equally, if there's character assassinations being done on Sancho, then and there's lies, then I'll call it out. But again, I haven't seen Sancho recently, as you put it, suffer what Luis Skelly has. And Luis Skelly's is topical. England just got together, and that's why it's being discussed, my friend. So appreciate it, but you have been debunked there, my friend. Listen, gents, absolute pleasure sitting talking football with you for the last hour and a half or so. Be great, Sonny, Alfie and Wolfie, to get you back on the Top 6 show again in the future. Tom and Henry, always a pleasure, boys. It really, really is. I want to thank all of our viewers. Please make sure you hit the like button before you go and make sure you are subscribing. This video is going to redirect you to Hassam's channel if you want to go over there and watch him. I'm going to be live on the United Stand talking transfers, supposedly in terms of Semenyo. Agreed. We're going to be talking about that over on the United Stand at 8 o'clock. But thank you to everybody that has tuned in. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to my super chatters and everyone who's hit the like button. Until next time, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon. Peace.